Hello.
Hello.
Good afternoon. This is meant to be a casual conversation, right?
As casual as possible.
Yeah. Awesome. We wanted to speak about corporate urbanism, and I think one of the frameworks that we discussed and that's something we share in our work, and we think is something that we'll see more and more across the globe, is that corporations, brands, if you will, are leveraging their corporate real estates, their campuses, their stores in ways that serve the wider city in many different ways. I think every brand corporation is looking to attract talent, to get more meaningful, authentic connections with consumers. And frankly, if we look, and it was something that was discussed in the morning, if you look at the role of working from home, the whole hybrid work, that is impacting space in corporate real estates. I think a question for many leaders now is like, what do we do? Are we trying to divest from that space? Or are we looking at a more holistic way of repurposing, reimagining that space in a way that it builds new relations to the communities, to the citizens, and through that really drive sustainability, health and well-being, just connection really. And there's something on that we did design, but I wanted to switch back to your work, Andy, talking more about Spotify in the LA's art district.
Right. You know, I think to your point too, what's really amazing right now is with the revolution that's come out in redefining what workplace can be. You know, traditionally in the design realm of what we do, so much is balanced by a factor of how much square footage a single person takes up, right? Pre-pandemic, we were working with companies that ranged anywhere between 125 square feet, which means super, super dense, tons of people, very small amount of space, to 250 square foot per person. I think going through the pandemic and where we are with hybrid working, we're seeing that the square footage numbers increased up to 500, 700 square foot per person. And so a lot of the potential that we have right now is helping our clients redefine what to do with that real estate, right? And Spotify is a really great example where in LA, they kind of really game changed the market from the perspective of so much of the music industry in Los Angeles was 50 different doors to knock on to get launched as an artist. I'm not a recording artist, but if I did that, right, I'm gonna hustle on social media, I'm gonna go try to find recording studios, I'm gonna try to find someone to release my record, I'm gonna pray that somebody gives me access to perform and or meet really important industry people. And the Spotify project really consolidates that whole industry into a singular footprint. It leverages this ability to increase workplace density to really celebrate a notion of bringing community into the built environment. And so on campus in Los Angeles, you have programs that are your day-to-day workplace, but in addition to that, you have every step programmatically it takes to be an artist on the rise. I can come in, within a day I can grab a coffee, as you can kind of see here on screen. I can get ushered into recording studios. I have a place for my squad and friends to land in green rooms. I record a single, I record a music video. I can launch product in a screening room, and more importantly, what's really amazing, this sort of 10% rule we love to advocate for, you get an amazing 800-person music venue that can really open up its doors to the art district and participate in the urban realm of the community there, right? So it's this idea of sort of turning your back away from the boundary of day-to-day requirements and allowing the community to come in a profound way.
And how do you see then the relation in your work between, for example, interior architecture, but also sort of the wider thinking on landscape architecture and the relation in and out in the building and campus?
Right. You know, we are a multidisciplinary practice based in LA, so a lot of the ways that we solve design is through opportunities of pulling disciplines together to not only address it as interior architects, but as landscape architects, as brand integration and signage, as urban design in the sense of how does this not create an oasis or something that turns its back to the fabric of the arts district, but how does it celebrate it? There's a barista stand in the project that's actually a reference to 1970s taco stands in Los Angeles. If you can find that reference, I will put $100 up. Good luck finding it. True taco connoisseurs know it. But you know, what's really amazing is that these problems aren't solved solely by the tradition of delivering what we knew as workplace 2 years ago. It's actually finding ways to leverage as much as possible to redefine opportunities with every client that we work with.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. And I think what is interesting to me is that Spotify, as being such a tech-driven brand, of course, sort of existing in virtual space, spends so much time and energy and money, frankly, in developing a campus like this.
Right.
And I think that's spatiality almost of the whole experience is then quite a meaningful component.
Yeah, 100%. You know, I think they take, you know, it's an amazing relationship or collaboration between Spotify and Rios because they have the same sort of moral compass that we did. A lot of the artist engagement, a lot of the murals that you see here were intentionally done to pull in contribution from LA makers. It's the same sort of artist program that they've used here in New York with integrating work within the project where it's an open call to artists to participate in submitting and getting your work showcased in one of Spotify's spaces. The amazing opportunity here in LA is because you have that whole musical footprint in a singular building, they can build amazing ties within the high school communities to really give people opportunities to come into the facility and launch a hopeful career in the industry. So
yeah, amazing.
Yeah, what about you and Nike?
Yeah, sure. No, sorry, I just wanted to. I mean, I studied at SciArc in the art district, and I think that was a while ago. But seeing also how that whole neighborhood, of course, develops and how much creativity is sort of being rooted there, and then these spaces are super meaningful.
Yeah.
Now, before jumping to Nike in Berlin, I just wanted to ask you one more thing on, I think something that we see in our work is that, of course, while creating these environments, sort of the hardware of such a project, there's also that layer of experiences, sort of the software of a project. And how do you see that? I mean, something that you maybe not straight away have as part of your design brief or of your proposal as a designer, but then sort of the operational use and the whole. For example, if you look at a music studio like that, I mean, it's not only a great design, but it also requires day-to-day programming. Right. Is it something that you can influence through your work?
Yeah, you know, I think a lot of the way that we provide design solutions requires a pretty robust operational concept on behalf of each client that we work with. I think this is that moment in our opportunity in redefining what workplace can be and how it connects into community-driven programming is taking the onus of figuring out how to make it work, right? In the screening room you see here on screen, are there potential ways of hosting weekly matinees for the surrounding community that has a promise associated to it from an operations perspective? And I think early on when thinking through the various ways that program can engage beyond the boundary of the control of Spotify in this case, it's conversations such as that to sort of talk through the programming hurdles that would come from introducing concepts like this into the project. So this idea of thinking beyond design and actually thinking about being an owner of the space is really important.
Yeah, 100%, yeah. I would love to have the slides back.
Forget about Nike.
Yeah, forget about Nike. Yeah. Yeah, at the start of the slideshow, please. Otherwise, we'll have to freestyle.
You might have to go all the way back.
Then we go all the way back. That's also fine.
There we go.
One of the
I can also talk in reverse while you're.
Yeah, this is some work that we did for Nike, and it's I'm not sure if Michael is still in the room, but this was done in partnership between Nike and Oxford Properties. So this is the Sony Center in Berlin, which is currently undergoing major transformation. It's for the one of you who know, ginormous mixed-use campus with a fair amount of office space, residential, and of course a lot of leisure program, and an enormous destination and in a very strategic and also a very historical part of Berlin, a very transformative part of Berlin, I should say. And one of the things in our work, as we discussed, is I think what we're seeing is, and it has been mentioned in many other sessions, is that huge concern, and I think we should acknowledge the physical inactivity crisis, the mental health crisis. I mean, there's so much in our public spaces, cities, that we can sort of step by step try to design for and try to address in the spaces. Yeah, this project shows what sort of you can do with brands on that intersection between communities, campuses, cities. We collaborated and Blasti developed the project together with Tancredi Staubach, landscape architects, we basically converted quite a dark corner of the Sony Center into quite a colorful, bright, and I'm not the first one with mirrors today in the presentations, but quite a colorful multi-use sports ground. With the idea of, okay, one, as we discussed, creating a new environment for people to play, to sport. I think in particular also that informal way of sport. And secondly, also to create that experience. And I think what we liked about developing this scheme was it's that combination of understanding if we are able to get people moving again, if we make sure, if we help people to thrive, then also places thrive, then business thrives, and community thrives. And what we worked with here, I'm still figuring out, going back and forth, is with very simple, because this is this is a small scale intervention. This is very tactical in a way. It's an environment that is open to all. So this Nike Experience Hub is programmed 7 days a week with free classes for every athlete in Berlin. And an athlete, I mean everyone with a body is an athlete, as per Bill Bowerman.
If you work with Nike, that's an important thing to.
That's an important thing.
I am an athlete.
we're all athletes.
I don't work out at all.
No, and I think this is exactly trying to sort of respond to that. How can we help people? How can we nudge people to come out of that office and stop that sedentary lifestyle of us sitting here again? I mean, can we also do a yoga session there together, or can we go out and dance for 30 minutes? So that idea of activating spaces in cities, and I think what I like about your work, and I think that relates in a way to this one, is also thinking of new ways, really, of leveraging spaces that you might not always think about, or partnerships that you might not always think about, to come up with new models of shaping cities for good.
Yeah, this project's super fascinating to me. It seems like the quintessential clapback on behalf of Nike, because this is surrounded by other companies, right? You're sort of strategically inserting this around other offices day to day for people to come out and become recreational.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I think we also do work, as Chris mentioned, on the EMEA headquarters for Nike in Hilversum, on the outskirts of Amsterdam. Mm-hmm. But that is still a corporate campus, and of course we're opening up facilities there. We're really working with community to leverage that in more meaningful ways. But this is going into the city.
Right.
This is almost trying to be part of sort of influencing and being part of the third spaces in the cities. In Oxford, Properties has been an amazing partner on this project, and I think it's not something that is only limited to Nike. I think there are many more brands, corporations that could really step up and take their responsibility in being part of our urban society.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting that this project really demonstrates this idea of launching client out into the urban realm, and the fascination is potentially also how does a client address extending in the urban realm and what they're doing. We really believe wholeheartedly that our office in LA is kind of a case study that I can bring clients in and show them honestly where things fail and celebrate where things don't fail and are successful. But in juggling this notion of how to sort of understand the pulling in of urban and or community within projects, we had an amazing opportunity with reimagining. In our office, we had an all-hands space, which pre-pandemic was where all hands came together to talk about things. But post-pandemic, not really post-pandemic, living in a pandemic world and understanding hybrid, that space had to get reimagined, right? Yeah. And a lot of clients that we're working with are imagining, what do I do with all the space? And for us, our case study really introduced a way to bring community in. So we set ourselves up in our neighborhood of Leimert Park in LA to do voting 4 times a year. We set up with 40 polling stations, and no one ever believes us, and then I can show them the Instagram feeds from when we do it and what it means to sort of disrupt people's perception of what it is, what that wall is between our office and the community. We've started doing co-working and co-sharing of community use in our conference rooms, things of that nature. So having these different case studies of, do you go out and become tactical in the urban realm, or do you potentially address that in your own facility of bringing people in profound ways? Where do you think the future of this goes with these activations? I mean, obviously this is beautifully Nike. Our brand is everybody's an athlete, and everybody is active, and it's a way to sort of bring wellness into the urban realm. But what's the potential with this long term?
Yeah, I think the potential is to really. I mean, I think of course there's a big question underneath. If we look also in our work with cities, with governments, I mean, we all know, and that's reality, that budgets are shrinking. I mean, it's not only for cities and for governmental bodies to invest in public space. And I'm not arguing for complete privatization, but I think on that intersect, I think there's a lot of potential to, in authentic and meaningful ways, have brands collaborate on activating spaces in cities, either public or semi-private spaces, like the Sony Center here. And I think I mean, it's always case by case. So I think we have to be, in our work with Velocity around sort of the European continent, I mean, paradigms differ per country. I mean, and these kind of interventions are not one-on-one replicable in Paris, for example. I mean, there would be maybe in London, but I think this is a direction I think that we're going, and I think it's much more of a design question, not so much in sort of spatial design, but also a process design. Like, how do we bring the right stakeholders on board? How do we do this in a co-creative, in an inclusive way? But I think it has to happen. I think we need to fight physical inactivity. I think we need to fight social isolation, and I think it's one of the panels later on. I think that's, for us, it's happening in between the buildings. It's these kind of pockets in cities that we can really make so much more meaningful in the next couple of years. Right. And for me, it's more a question like, what brands are stepping up to do this together with us?
Right. I mean, it's the ask of the private sector to be participants in reimagining what potential activation in the urban realm can be, whether it's something like this or it's something within their own buildings and facilities. It's sort of putting the onus on everybody to engage and realize it's not about turning your back or building walls. It's actually about bringing the community into, or taking yourself to the community to do good in that.
100%, yeah. And one thing, I mean, I'm keen to learn how you see that. I mean, when we think of opening up spaces within corporate real estate, I mean, part of that, of course, is advocating and working with the outside community, but part of it is also working with the internal community of that corporation. And if you look, I mean, corporations can also be quite private and quite concerned about security, for example.
Right.
Did you have to overcome that in this project?
100%. I mean, LA is nothing but paparazzi. It's photogs everywhere you go, right? Yeah. So I think when you know how to live within the industry and kind of speak the language and understand the reality of a given context, whether it be LA, whether it be New York, once you can work within those parameters, you can leverage them to actually find opportunities, right? And it's sort of taking naive ideas, but informing them and opening up dialogue and being able to show that everything is malleable in the sense of there are easy ways to do this, right? Obviously here with Spotify, there's a lot of sensitivity towards artists coming in, a lot of sensitivity of what that circulation is from a sort of brand experience, from hospitality, but that's where the knowledge base is, right? It's not the expertise on workplace, it's the expertise on the event and understanding how to make things happen within the boundary of a building in a profound way.
Yeah, 100%, yeah. And I think one of the things that I'm and also mindful of the time that we still have, one thing that we see in our work and would love to learn from you is also sort of the longevity of it. I mean, the commitment to a space. So that installation in Berlin is not just a pop-up for 6 months or some kind of a brand activation. Hey, we're here with a new shoe and come support with us. It's a long-term commitment to that space and with that partner, which I think is key. I mean, if we want to change habits in cities, if we want to work with communities, brands, and us as designers or strategists, we need to be trustable partners. So we can't just say, hey, we're opening up the doors or we're providing the space and then move after 3 months or lock it up again. You probably agree.
Yeah, I mean, for me, the aspiration is convincing a client that screening room they're building for their company can be a place for families of the neighborhood to grab popcorn and see a movie on a Friday, or a venue to sort of grow with longevity and becoming an integral part of the culture of a neighborhood, right? I think the more we can push our clients to see that potential and get them to invest in that type of thing, there could be a really interesting new way to imagine a model that provokes the private sector to really open up and invest in participating. So That's the aspiration.
What's the next one after Spotify?
Confidentially, I cannot talk about anything.
And here together with us in this private space?
No. What about you? What's your next one?
I think there's enormous potential for these kind of things, and I think what we're seeing is that it's not about the brand. It's really about the purpose and the intention behind it. Stay tuned. There will be something in Europe soon. Yeah.
Perfect.
I want to thank you. We're running out of time. Let's invite everyone to continue this discussion like later on today. And thanks for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.